Hello and welcome to all of our attendees for our webinar, How to Achieve Success in Cybersecurity, One Woman's Inspirational Story. And our speaker for the day, Julie Beck, is an information security analyst. I'm Khaled and I will be your host for the day. Just a few instructions. The session will be in listen-only mode and will last for about 40 to 50 minutes, out of which last 10 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Requesting all the participants to post your questions in the Q&A window. Should you need any assistance during the session, please use the Q&A box. Also, if you face any audio-video challenges, please check your internet connection or you may log in and log out again to verify it. An important announcement for our certification. Participants need to attend the complete webinar to qualify for the certificate of attendance. Participants should fill in the survey in the form of in the attendees thank you mail. Answer the 3 questions based on the webinar provided by the speaker with the right answers within the same day. If these 2 criteria are met, only then the participant will receive a certificate of attendance within 5 to 7 working days after the webinar. Now, a brief about our speaker. Julie Beck has over 20 years of experience in IT industry. She holds an CEH and obtained a master's in cybersecurity from EC Council University in 2019. She graduated with summa cum laude and was first woman to obtain the top academic award from EC Council University. Julie's interests include pen testing, IFIR, DFIR, OSINT. She volunteers with Innocent Lives Foundation and Participants in Trace Labs CTF. Without any further delay, I would now like to hand over the session. Over to you, Julie.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome, everyone. As Colette was saying, I'm Julie Beck. A little bit about me is I'm a single mom of 4 and a cat mom. I've been in the IT industry a little over 20 years. I have a bachelor's degree in biomedical informatics, a master's in information technology, and most recently, as of 2009, I obtained a master's in cybersecurity from EC Council University, and I graduated with summa cum laude, 4.0 GPA. I also received the top academic award. I was the first woman to ever attain the award at the university. I'm a certified ethical hacker, have skills in OSINT, and some forensics. I participated in Trace Labs CTS and volunteer with Innocent Lives Foundation. I just want to take a brief moment to say that my opinions are my own and in no way reflect the opinions of ILF or EC Council. So for years, the tech industry has been plagued with gender stereotyping. I grew up in a generation that women were subordinate to men, and we were told that tech roles were mostly for men. Girls were led to believe that men were better in science and math and women were better at nursing. However, I stand here today along with many other women who have been proven to be successful in the area of STEM. And we went against what we were brought up to believe, that girls are not good in science or math. I wanted to share my story with you today in hopes that I would provide some inspiration to other women who are interested or have been thinking about entering the IT industry. Just want to have this trigger warning real quick. I just wanted to take a moment and let you know some of the things I'm going to discuss involve abuse. So feel free to leave if you're triggered by the discussion of domestic violence or abuse. Today, I'm an information security analyst for a local mortgage company. However, it was not always my dream to be in computer science. My track in high school was to enter healthcare. Nursing was my career path. Well, because that's what girls were supposed to do. I also signed up for a typing class. Once again, because that was supposedly girls were better suited for administrative assistance jobs. However, my second typing class that I went through introduced me to a newfound passion. We transitioned from using an old-fashioned typewriter to using a computer. The teacher taught us how to use the DOS command line. And let me tell you what, I thought I was something because I could print out a ton of X's to make them into any picture I wanted, and I thought that I was the Van Gogh of the command line. I remember going home and telling my parents I wanted a computer, to which they replied, "Computers are way too expensive. Only businesses can afford them." Then one day, my dad came in and told me that he wanted me to go along with him for an errand. We went to this lady's house, and I remember her asking me if I was interested in computers. She worked for IBM. She asked me if I was interested in computers and told me that it was rare to see a young lady interested in computers. She said, "You can do it. Never give up." She said, "I tell you what, because this is for you, and I know you will go far with computers because of your interest, I'm going to make your dad a deal." We took the old IBM heavy computer home that day, and I spent hours on that computer analyzing every single part, from the old floppy disk to trying to open it up and look inside. The point of this story is no matter what age you are, male or female, take the time to encourage someone. You never know the impact it could have on someone. Over 30 years later, and I still remember this lady's comment. This was the picture of the IBM computer that I first got. You can tell how huge that thing was. So I spent a lot of time on that computer. You see, I didn't have many friends. I was a loner. At the age of 2, I was unofficially diagnosed with epilepsy. They couldn't identify epileptic activity on an EEG, but the doctors witnessed me having a seizure and put me on a heavy dose of medication. A doctor told my mother that I would either outgrow the seizures or they would get progressively worse. Unfortunately, they got progressively worse in how many and how severe they were. At the age of 16, a man 14 years older than me came along and promised me the world. But along with that came domestic violence, nonstop belittling that I would never amount to anything without him, gaslighting and control. I was degraded and told I was nothing but a burden to my entire family. He manipulated, blackmailed, and controlled my emotions and made me feel morally obligated to comply with his demands. I was threatened and told not to communicate with anyone that he didn't approve of. But being pretty much isolated from the rest of the world, and while me being determined and stubborn, I figured out how to use that AOL dial-up CD for internet connection. And then I found IRC channels and AOL chat rooms. I got booted out of a few and encountered several blue screens. But the best thing about it was a connection to the outside world. I remember making friends with a girl whose handle was Miss Smiley 19. I recall learning how to cover my tracks too, because I didn't want my then husband to find out I was on the computer. I'd clear out any of the website history, take the CD out, clear out the vent logs, shut down the computer before he got home from work, and ensure he never found out that I was talking to anyone. I also did some investigating of my own and was finding out what he was looking at, and I scoffed at his inability to cover his tracks. My seizures continued to get worse, and by this time I had 3 kids. The domestic violence, verbal abuse, and affairs continued to get worse. However, I couldn't drive or leave. I lived in Georgia, and Georgia law stated you couldn't drive if you hadn't been seizure-free for 6 months. I knew I'd be taking a risk, a much bigger risk than just getting a ticket or having my license suspended. I could endanger someone else's life. Between being scared to leave due to the seizures and scared of my then husband for disobeying, I stayed home and isolated myself. We didn't have cable TV. I wasn't allowed to listen to the radio, and so I found myself on the old computer we had. During that time, I started looking at websites and the source code. I began to wonder how it all worked and how it all was put together. I began to do what we now call parameter tampering and script injection. I thought it was cool that I could change the user that was logged in by changing the URL, and I could change the background colors of a website using script injection. Fast forward about 8 years, the violence had gotten so bad, I was calling the police out several times a week to file a report. I'd been kicked with steel-toed boots, slapped, thrown downstairs, cell phones were shattered, and I even ran down the street in fear of losing my life at times. The cops told me, this is not a game, you need to leave. This type of violence escalates, and I don't want to be called out here again to find it's a homicide the next time. When we would go out in public, I was scared to say anything. I had to put on a forward-facing front of a submissive wife. My then husband put on a front of being the respectful man of authority. He played mind games and used gaslighting on me, and he was even so convincing that the next time I called the cops out, he told the cops I was the one that was abusive to him. And because he had one scratch mark, they took me to jail that day. I went through the cycle of abuse. I left and came back numerous times, and each time I returned, the fights intensified. The first time I left, I was able to arrange secretly to leave with just the clothes on my back. A neighbor had noticed something wasn't right. She stepped up and came to me and started asking questions. She could tell something wasn't right. I finally confided in her, and she helped me to get out of the situation I was in. After I left, I was stalked and harassed, and we went through numerous court cases and custody disputes. I had to file temporary restraining orders. I want to take a brief moment here to say something regarding domestic violence. If you suspect something is wrong, say something. You could be the only person that notices. Do something. Reach out and talk to that person. You never know that you may be that person that can help them. So, while attending the Hacker Halted conferences, I've met several people with the same mission of helping people come out of domestic violence situations. I learned of Operation Safe Escape, and I met several individuals who started online communities or mobile apps to help victims of domestic violence. We didn't have this technology and the apps back then when I was going through it. For years, I wish someone would have been able to see through my facade and realize I wasn't okay. 2 years ago, I got this tattoo that resonates how I felt during that time. When you look at it forward facing, it reads, "I'm fine." But when you look at it from the opposite direction, it reads, "Save me." Every time I went out, I put on a forward facing front of "I'm fine," but really internally, I was screaming, "Someone save me." I came back home to my mom and dad's and continued to see a doctor for my seizures. The doctors continued to write me off as having psychosis, and they were still unable to get any epileptic activity on an EEG readout. They had me believing I was just crazy. He told me, "I've done all I can do for you. I'm going to refer you to Emory." I was on over 26 pills a day. I weighed only 98 pounds at the time, and I was having multiple seizures a day. I was no longer living, but was just surviving. Most everyday things people take for granted I could not do. I wore a phone on my hip everywhere I went. I tried to cook once and ended up going into a seizure and spilled sizzling hot grease on my foot. I tried to iron my clothes and started convulsing, and the hot iron landed right on my arm, leaving a scorch mark. I couldn't go outside with my kids for fear of passing out and them getting ran over. The doctor sent me to Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. Apparently, Emory had better technology because the first test they ran was another EEG, and lo and behold, they identified epileptic activity. I couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic that I wasn't crazy after all, and there was something actually physically wrong with me. I was told that if I agreed to more testing, they could possibly have a solution for me. After a plethora of other tests and many months later, I was scheduled for brain surgery. March 1st, 2006, I had brain surgery, which cured me 100%. I came off all medications and I had my life back. I no longer had to live with the seizures. I no longer had to live with the abuse. My life changed drastically. I had a zeal for life, and every day I felt like I was living on an adrenaline rush for life. I decided at that point I would never again put myself in a situation to be codependent in a toxic relationship. I would make a way for myself and my children without anyone's financial support. That is when I decided to go back to college. I self-taught PHP and front page and then began doing contract websites. I attained a job as a computer programmer and continued my studies. I was eager to learn more. I had a mentor who encouraged me to attend classes for secure programming. The instructor for that class was so passionate in teaching, and I was entranced by all the material. I listened intently to every word that was said. It was in that class that I fell in love with cybersecurity. I set a goal that I wanted to obtain the ethical hacker certification. I used SMART goals. I made sure I wrote down my goals, that they were specific, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. I began attending conferences like Hacker Halted and TakedownCon. As a side note, TakedownCon was the first time I had ever went out of state alone, and I also made my first attempt at testing for the ethical hacker certification. I drove from Georgia to Huntsville, Alabama by myself. That was monumental for me. It was a monumental moment in my life. I thought it was big stuff going somewhere alone. So I got to the hotel that day and I checked in. That night I decided I would go to the hotel lobby to eat and maybe get out and explore some. It was the middle of July and really hot outside, and I opened my hotel door to see a man in a long trench coat and thought to myself, not today. Nope, not today. I had heard enough news stories to know that a guy in a trench coat in the middle of the dead heat of summer was probably not going to turn out well. So I closed my door and ordered room service. I later got enough nerve to leave my hotel room again, only to find out that a Doctor Who convention was going on in town. But I digress. Just a funny note. I went on to obtain 2 master's degrees. At this time, I changed jobs and was interviewing with a new company. And I asked in the interview if they'd be willing to pay for my education. They told me in the interview that they had never done that before. After the interview was over, they asked me to step outside to the lobby and wait. I waited for about 10 minutes, and the HR lady called me back into her office. She informed me that the owner of the company had had a change of heart and decided he'd be more than willing to pay for my education. Despite my degrees, though, I still maintained a job in development area of technology. It seemed to be a challenge to shift paths, having had 0 work experience in cybersecurity and many years of experience in development. The company I had worked for had no security department and seemingly no appetite for security at the time. In 2018, a new CIO came onto the company, and at that time I was still in the development role. My then boss, seeing my passion for security, encouraged me to set up a meeting with a new CIO. He says, you need to talk to the new CIO. I was hesitant, but he nudged me. Okay, maybe he pushed me, because he pushed me to set up this meeting. And I spent a few days preparing for a presentation. In January of 2019, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I was able to meet with our new CIO. I gave him a presentation as to why security was important and why I was the person for the job. I found it ironic that I was basically giving him my I have a dream speech that day. I was hired, promoted on the spot. That was the pivoting point to my transition from development to cyber. I paved my way into this career path. Today, I do a little bit of everything from incident response, forensics, pen testing, and work on compliance and governments. In my personal endeavors and studies, I've been focusing on social engineering, reading body language, profiling, and developing OSINT tools. So enough about me. Let's talk about some takeaways and things we can do to help move ourselves through our career paths. Number one, find a mentor. This person could be someone already in the industry. Mine spoke words of encouragement to me and reassured me many times. There will be days that it will be tough, and during that time, you will need someone to look up to and remind you that you've got this. Number two, network and attend conferences. I cannot emphasize this enough. It is so important to meet people in this industry and network and build relationships. As the old saying goes, it's not about who you know. It's not about you, but it's about who you know. Not one person can do everything alone. Find those people you can trust and go to when you have questions or need to reach outside your expertise to find answers. I can tell you there's a lot of distrust in this industry, and rightfully so. You do not know who's there for you for your best interest. Meeting people, making those connections, and finding people that you can trust will assist you in your career. If you're interested in getting involved in technology industry and find yourself discouraged or intimidated, I encourage you to find conferences to go to or networking events. There are many virtual groups that meet up like DC 404. There are many programs available like IBM's to help cover the cost of entrance to Hacker Halted and others. The Human Hacking Conference has been amazing and has had some spectacular speakers like retired FBI Robin Dreeke and Joe Navarro. Robin speaks on the importance of relationships and rapport building. Tap into these resources because it's important to network and connect with people in this industry. 3, don't be afraid to ask for assistance. The company I worked for had never done tuition assistance program. I could have easily said, oh, well, they don't offer tuition assistance. I guess I'm just stuck because I can't afford this. By asking, the owner decided to change his policies, and it's now became a new benefit going forward for all employees. I could have also said, I'm just stuck doing development work. By presenting my skill sets to the new CIO, I was able to create my own position and department that didn't exist before. Look for the opportunities that you can create for yourself. 4, advance yourself with an education. Having a degree that will set you apart from other candidates. EC Council University Online and their certification programs has helped me advance in my career and get to that next pay scale. EC Council provides the best of the best technology courses, giving you hands-on experience in labs. EC Council is set apart in their teaching methodologies, and their content is the best that is out there. And lastly, have a positive attitude. Having a passion to drive you and a good outlook on life will take you a long way. Every year I've attended Hacker Halted. Jay Bavisi typically does the opening keynote and speaks about giving back to the community and finding ways to be involved. He encourages us to go out and find opportunities to give back or educate the community. And I reverberate this message. We don't have to wait until we have obtained that cert or that degree. We should all find a way to be a part of the community. In 2019, I heard Chris Hadnagy speak at Hacker Halted about Innocent Lives Foundation. The mission of ILF really spoke to me, and I felt I wanted to be a part of this great mission because I myself had been a victim, and I wanted to help others to not be victimized. I volunteer alongside many great men and women at the Innocent Lives Foundation. If you haven't heard of Innocent Lives Foundation, they're a nonprofit organization that helps identify child predators online. They work closely with law enforcement from all levels, depending upon the case. Over 318 cases have been worked, and 239 cases have been submitted to law enforcement for their review. Last year alone, 156 cases were submitted. If you'd like to get involved, you can go to innocentlivesfoundation.org and you can apply to volunteer there. And if you do not have the time or to volunteer, or you do not feel like it's a good fit for you, but you would still like to support us, then monetary donations are always appreciated. It takes about $10,000 to submit one case to law enforcement, so your donations are appreciated. I also am a regular participant at Trace Labs CTFs. The CTFs are Capture the Flags. Trace Labs has gamified and crowdsourced finding missing children and people. The participants use OSINT to capture flags and submit them for points. Once the event is over, Trace Lab compiles all the information to a report to provide to the authorities and possibly give them leads on finding the missing suspects. I wholeheartedly believe that a college education gives you an advantage over others when it comes to applying for jobs. It boosts your pay. But I do not just support a college education because of the obvious advantage that it gives you in the workplace. Attending college gives you critical thinking skills, time management skills, and organizational skills. As I'm an advocate for continuing education, in April of this year, I've returned to EC Council as adjunct faculty and I'm teaching undergrad classes. EC Council's undergrad degree program equips students for the real world. They give you hands-on skills that you can take with you into any workplace and be successful. You do not just read about the technology, you actually use it. Having this hands-on experience gives you the confidence and the skill sets you need to be successful in any situation. As you make the decision to embark on this journey and obtain a degree, I want you to commit to you. Chase Hughes said, dedication is prioritizing the needs of your future self over the desires of your present self. We as humans don't have a problem with commitment. We commit to hiding our flaws. We commit to making others happy and supporting others at our own expense. We commit to what society tells us we should be rather than being true to ourselves. Rather than committing to what others think we should be, commit to yourself. Commit to your future self. See your dreams and your aspirations through. With the education from EC Council, the learning sessions and conference talks from Hacker Halted, and my certifications, I have a solid educational background that has equipped me with the self-confidence and knowledge to work with anyone in this industry, whether male or female. Yes, cyber and IT is a predominantly male industry, but I'm here to tell you that it doesn't matter if you're male or female. All that matters is that you have the knowledge and understanding of the material and technology. If I, coming from an extremely toxic background with men and domestic violence, can enter a room full of men and confidently dominate the room, so can you. It's all about knowledge. Knowledge is power. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to my story, and I hope that it has inspired someone here today. And if you'd like to connect, my information is on the screen. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Should we start, Julie, with the question?
Yes, please.
Yes, just to say your presentation was so impressive, and your journey is really something that will inspire so many people from the audience. I'm sure about that. So the first question is from Aditya. What are the concepts that needs to be covered in order to become a cybersecurity expert? I think that was pretty much covered in the PPT, but do you want to elaborate on it?
Yes, so you really want to focus on your education and go into networking and conferencing and start meeting people, and then you will want your basic education, from networking to understanding the security of computers. You need to have a good baseline understanding of pretty much all the systems if you want to go into cybersecurity, and then also be willing to get your hands dirty when it comes to compliance and governance. I know many people kind of end up snubbing their nose at compliance and governance of, oh, I don't want to write policies, but to be in cybersecurity, a lot of that work is governance and policies. So being able to have effective writing skills is also something I think is very important for you.
Okay. Before we move on to the next questions, we have just put on a poll to let us know your opinion. We'll be closing it shortly. So the second question is from Manmeet, and the question is, I am in the operations department. What should I do to make my way into the security department?
I would definitely express your interest to your boss and let them know and ask them if they would cover classes. Many managers, if you go to them and say, hey, I have an interest in this, they're going to be willing to work with you because they want you to be able to grow just as much as you want to grow and they want to support you. So go to your boss, go to whoever that may be, and express to them your interest and ask them if they're willing to help cover the cost of those trainings. And then maybe you can eventually create a pathway for yourself to say, hey, this is an advancement opportunity for me to be able to move from operations into cybersecurity.
Okay, so the next question is similar to the previous one. As a beginner in cybersecurity, where to start and how?
As a beginner in cybersecurity, I really started just to kind of be inquisitive and started looking at things online myself. And then that is when I decided, this was not enough for me. I wanted more. I wanted an education. And that's when I applied to go start taking my classes. At that time, I found it very challenging to be able to afford that on my own. And that's why I went to my employers and asked the question of them if they'd be willing to cover that. And fortunately for me, they were, and that opened the door up for me. But I definitely would look at education and networking and attending these conferences. You do learn a lot of stuff by attending the conferences, in addition to just regular education.
Okay, another question is from Priya. She says, she asks actually, which certification should we start with?
Um, so there are several really good certifications from EC Council. The SOC analyst one is really good. Trying to think of some of the other ones. The CND is another one that is a really good one. Those would be very good baselines I would start with.
Sure. Okay, Nikhil also has the same question. Okay, Michael says, thank you. Your story is very inspiring and thank you for speaking out. The question is, what cybersecurity bulletin, webinar, RSS feed do you recommend to begin with?
Um, So I really just follow the feeds, and I listen to Darknet Diaries. I've listened to many of the podcasts available. If you'll just search cybersecurity podcasts, you can listen to those as well. Krebs on Security is pretty good for a blog site. There's several. You just have to Google it, and you'll find some that's in your area that you can listen to on a regular basis.
I think we are done with questions. Anyone from the audience wants to ask any more questions, please put it in the box. Okay. So again, there's a comment from Ash, and she also thanks you for sharing your story. It's inspired her, and that's an encouragement that she needed. And she also shares a very similar story to yours. We will definitely share it with you, Julie. This feedbacks are something that are really precious to us, and I'm sure it is for you too. We'll
Yes.
definitely share it with you. So for all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining in. It was a pleasure having you, and we cannot thank you enough, Julie, for joining us and sharing your story, talking about all of your struggles, as well as making a success into an industry like cybersecurity, which is assumed to be mostly dominated by men and is at some level is majorly dominated by men. But you coming across as a strong woman and talking about it makes a lot of difference. Thank you so much. Thank you for inspiring.
Thank you for having me.
Bye bye. Good night, everyone. Take care.